When we think of healthcare, pharma, biotech, and medtech often grab headlines, but healthcare services makes up nearly 10% of GDP. I'm Michael Brown, senior reporter at The Deal, and I'm joined today by William Blair Managing Director Dan Chedevy to discuss the trend. So Dan, what are you seeing in the sector as it compares to the broader M&A market?
Well, certainly a very strong M&A market. 2014 globally was about $3.4 trillion, up about 37% versus 2013. A lot of that, though, was driven by a significant upsurge in mega cap deals. You had about 87 different deals in excess of $5 billion, almost twice as many as what we saw in 2013. That's very similar to what we saw in healthcare services more broadly. So an upsurge in mega cap deals, and then those transactions are $1 billion down to $100 million, where we really focus, were relatively flat, but valuations were up. The broader market, about a half a turn. Healthcare services, though, was almost a full turn higher in 2014 versus 2013. A lot of the strength really is driven by a few different things. One is an abundance of capital, obviously a good economic backdrop, strong credit markets, healthy balance sheets, but there's a significant private equity overhang, about $500 billion. So when we're able to have private equity firms, in particular those that have longer vintage funds that are at the table, call it 2007, 2008, they can be very aggressive. So that's been a significant thing that we've seen. But strategics continue to be very active. So you can have a very healthy backdrop when you are running an M&A process. And that's been very constructive. In particular, if you can get international strategics. And we've seen a lot of Asian strategics get very engaged in our processes. It's important to not only know who to go to, but how you can actually run a process, who the right party is, what their approach is to diligence, so that you can make sure that those parties are at the table, because they're not only engaged, but they're getting very active. I think about 40% of our mandates in the last couple of years had Asian buyers in particular bidding on our processes.
Wow. And were there any other sort of subtle nuances to navigating these processes as an investment banker? Well,
with this backdrop, you can certainly take advantage of running strategic-only processes. We've seen an uptick there. We've benefited from that. But given how aggressive private equity firms can still be, you don't want to shut them out. You do need to be aware that with valuations being very high, or robust rather, that they are going to be a little more reticent to spend the time and money. Some of them have been burned by that. So you need to anticipate that as they're going in, because they may be reluctant to spend those types of resources to run after a potential opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, healthcare services is a pretty broad sector. Are there any sort of subsectors or silos of healthcare services that you think are particularly interesting?
Sure. So there are two sides of healthcare services from our perspective, kind of care provider models and then products and services. On the care provider model side, behavioral health continues to be very interesting. Large market where regulatory trends have been very favorable, be it mental health parity, the Affordable Care Act. And so everything from eating disorders, where we advised the Eating Recovery Center on its sale of Lee Equity, substance abuse, where we were lead left book runner on American Addiction Center's IPO, or even developmentally disabled models. That's been of particular interest. And then on the products and services side, I think contract manufacturing has been very interesting, especially for differentiated aspects that can help OEMs take costs out of the system and improve quality.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Michael Brown. Thank you for joining us.